Thank you, Mayor, council members. Bob Weeks, 2451 Regency Lakes Court in Wichita. I'm here today to simply ask, as I did last year at this time, and as I did this summer with a different agency, that we as a city not renew our contracts with these agencies, specifically the Go Wichita Convention and Visitors Bureau, until these organizations decide to follow Kansas law, specifically the Open Records Act. Now, I've requested records from this agency, and the agency says we're not a public agency. We're not bound by the Kansas Open Records Act. But the Kansas Open Records Act says a public agency means the state or any political or taxing subdivision of the state or any officer, agency, or instrumentality thereof, or any other entity receiving or expending and supported in whole or in part by the public funds appropriated by the state or by public funds of any political or taxing subdivision of the state. Now, according to the Convention of Visitors Bureau's 2008 annual report, 89% of its revenues come from taxes, specifically the transient guest tax. I suggest that that qualifies as supported in part by public funds. Now, the Kansas Open Records Act does have many exceptions, some which the city has said applies to this agency, but I don't believe that is the case. There's simply no rational or reasonable basis for this agency's assertion that it is not a public agency subject to the Kansas Open Records Act. Not only based upon the statute of the language in the statute of the Open Records Act, but the legislative intent. The legislature said, it is declared to be the public policy of the state that public records shall be opened for inspection by any person unless otherwise provided by this act, and this act shall be liberally construed and applied to promote such policy. So it's the policy of the state of Kansas that records should be open. Governmental bodies shouldn't be looking for excuses, for reasons to avoid complying with the law. They, as has the City of Wichita and this agency, they should be looking for ways to comply with the law and make information available to citizens and others. Now, I realize that Mr. Riebensdorf, the city attorney, disagrees with my contention that this agency is in fact a public agency as defined by the Kansas Open Records Act. But Mr. Riebensdorf has been wrong several times before when issuing guidance to this council regarding the Kansas Open Meetings Act, which is similar to the Kansas Open Records Act. He's taken the blame and had to apologize for these violations in the pages of the Wichita Eagle. He's quoted as saying, "I will make every effort to further a culture of openness." But with regard to my open records request, he's advised the city council to keep records closed when the law and public policy of the state says they should be open. He, or perhaps whoever is instructing him as to what opinions to write, is hostile towards open records and the citizens' right to know. And Mr. Mayor, you've spoken about building public trust in government and working to achieve greater transparency. And the manager, Layton, has as a goal promoting transparency by providing timely, accurate, and relevant information. This right today is a chance for the political leadership of the city to make a decision. Does the city promote transparency by deciding itself what information to release, or does it agree to citizen-driven accountability where citizens are in charge? It's not only this agency. There are two other agencies in similar situations. The Wichita Downtown Development Corporation and the Greater Wichita Economic Development Coalition are in similar situations. I'm simply asking that as a condition of renewing the city's contract with the Convention of Visitors Bureau, that you ask them to agree that they are in fact a public agency as defined in the Kansas Open Records Act, and that they fulfill the legitimate requests that citizens make. I think today all someone has to do from this bench is to make a motion that we agree to the contract with the stipulation that the Bureau, the agency, agree that it is a public agency, and I think that would be a way to handle this very simply. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or clarifications if I can.
Any question, Councilmember Skelton?
Question for Gary. Gary, tell me how the Go Wichita people comply with state law on open records, or manager. It's fine.
Mr. Skelton,
Councilman Skelton.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, sir.
I'm sorry. I think the attack on the city attorney here was unfair. This is not an opinion that has been issued by the city attorney for Go Wichita. Okay. Go Wichita has their own attorney and has to make the determination. he has rendered opinions before, and we, I think, in the last year especially, have gone out of our way to be open with disclosure of documents here and have been liberal in our interpretation of Cora. But this, again, is an issue that has to be determined by Go Wichita and their legal staff.